The money landed in his account while he and his wife were making dinner in the kitchen. There was relief, a warm embrace, and by the next morning, it was over. Justin Vandehey sold his company. Then he spent a week on the floor while his body recovered. What he found on the other side of that exit is not what he expected, and it's far more common than most entrepreneurs admit. I'm Nils Spinya, your business growth guide, and this is Courage and Breakthroughs. Justin, welcome to the Courage and Breakthroughs podcast. I'm thrilled to have you on the show today.
Nils, thanks for having me in, man. Good to be here.
I want to start with one of the most pivotal moments that you shared with me on your entrepreneurial journey, and that is the moment that you sold your company. Take me back to that moment and that day when that all happened and transpired, and tell me what was going on.
Yeah, for sure. A lot was going on. We were in the midst of a global pandemic, two little kids. I think we were closing on our house at that point in the midst of moving from California to Oregon, so the Pacific Northwest where I live. And I remember there's a lot that goes into a significant transaction. We went the route of not hiring a banker to manage it for us. So my brother and I, my co-founders, we did most of it on our own alongside an amazing and very patient and gracious attorney, which you don't hear those terms put together all. Shout out to Chris Dahl. He's the best in the team at All Turtles. But I think it was once all the logistical work was done, there was just this moment in my kitchen when the first wire hit, and it was just, I think I just collapsed, not collapsed physically, but just I felt like this sense of just relief, all of the documentation, all the paperwork, all the negotiation, all the posturing. It was just like, just an exhale. And I remember one really specific moment where it was just my wife and I standing in the kitchen making dinner, and she just threw her arms around me and was like, I'm really proud of you. And I think that's I don't know, it's like the warmest, the best feeling, less about the outcome, but I think it was just, there was so much sacrifice that went in just on everyone's personal front, right? There were dreams that were put on hold. There were financial decisions that were put on hold that it culminates to just like one moment in event. So you just feel like, okay, my people are taken care of and we're good like that. I think there was just a sense of relief. And then the irony is that, that's, I think one point of reflection is that that moment in our kitchen, it was like, after that, the next day, it was, all right, now what? The win itself was really, it's very short lived, right? Like they say, and that was, I think, the biggest reflection, right? As you start to think about the journey, the win itself is like one moment, one instance, but it's like life goes on. And there was a halo effect, right? Like you get into the merger and onboarding. What is your next role going to look like as part of this company? And I can speak more to that, but I think there were two things that I was reflecting on, is that the feel of the win was actually pretty sweet just for a very short amount of time. And then the second is that no one else really cared. You know what I mean? Like when you think about it more broadly, it's no one really, aside from the people that you're in it with day to day, you think got an exit, right? And this should mean something to my identity and personality. And the reality is no one really gave a shit. And I think that was a little bit like, oh, okay. It forces you to think internally about why you do stuff and like why you choose to start another company, take risks. And so anyway, that I just reflect back to that moment, and I know where I was. The deal closed October 1st. It was in my kitchen September 30th. And it was just making dinner with my wife and then just feeling relief and embrace. And then the next day it was like, oh shit, I got to set up my Culture Amp laptop, and what is my job? And so anyway,
That's an incredibly powerful moment. And you hit on a couple of really important things, and the things I've heard a lot in the stories of great entrepreneurs and the ones I've interviewed on this podcast. And that is the kind of fleeting moments that you could, in your mind for years and years, that was the target, was to exit at some point, to sell to somebody, to do something. And then it comes and it happens and you celebrate it and it lasts as a single moment. And the next day you're already on to what's next. So I'm curious, when that wire did hit and when you knew that the stress of everything was gone, was it literally the next morning when the gear shifted and you're like, all right, got to keep going? It wasn't, I'm going to take some time and chill out for a little bit. I'm going to catch up on a few hours of sleep I didn't get for the last 6 months. Or was it really just, you're driven? I'm not going to stop. I can't stop. I just got to keep going.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there was definitely a week of honestly, my body's physically shut down for a stretch, which was weird because it was literally my brother and I going through diligence, pulling all nighters for 3 weeks, 3 week stretch, right? And it was us versus Wilson Cincini. Right? This is pre ChatGPT or Claude, right? We didn't have the tools to be able to just rip through these answers, right? We were really in the grind. And I think when you're posturing and at any one moment, you know that this thing can fall apart for any one reason, right? Especially at such a sensitive time. I think you're just always on high alert. And it's like anytime, it's almost like extreme exercise where you're at this level of sustained effort for an extended period of time and your body just collapses.
Yeah.
I think that I spent a week on the floor, I think. And then, and we didn't take a trip anywhere. I literally I think I rewatched, what did I rewatch? I think I got into Succession right around that time. I was like, I literally just binge watched Succession for a week.
Nice.
And then he like crap. I don't even think I exercised. I was just like, I just need to melt. And then I came back that next week and I was like, all right, ready to like pick myself up, got some stamina back. But it was like your body, it's your mind and your body. I felt like I had a physical reaction, which sounds weird for that like first or second week after. And then the mental piece of it shifted where there was excitement initially around what could be, but then there was a real sense of loss. This is so weird because we're talking about successful financial outcomes and like building to this event, but I actually was really sad for a long time about the prospect of giving up the thing that we had built and operated. And while yes, we were in a good spot and everything was great on the surface, I had a really hard time giving up what we had. And both the team stuff, and then it just started to fold into how my self-worth and questions of purpose and what gets me going and why am I doing what I'm doing? And what are the relationships I have with my family and my wife and where am I spending time? And that was really hard. And it sounds like these are champagne problems, right? Everybody's, the money, more money, more problems or whatever. But it's like genuinely there was some real deep introspection that I had to do. And I don't know, man. I didn't think I was going to react like that. And what was funny is I've talked to more founders. It's actually more common than I realized. It's pretty, not just the loss of autonomy and giving up the thing that you were building, but more of a reflection on, the goal was to build to this event. Why? And it didn't solve all of my problems. Then what the hell was I doing this for? So I think, I don't know. A lot of reflection in there, but
it's fascinating. I appreciate you just being open and honest about it, because a lot of the, just say, public facing media side of any exits or acquisitions or things like that only ever talk numbers, right? What the founder is going to do in the next stage or whether they're sticking around or not. And the truth is exactly what you went through is very common. Deep sense of loss. And then coupled with, wait a second, am I really focusing on the right things for me? And for myself and for my family and for my people? And had you ever considered some of those questions before the acquisition?
Now, maybe going back to the beginning of the journey, when I started Disco with my brother, the catalyst for it was my wife, girlfriend at the time of my wife. We found out that we were going to be having a baby girl. And it was this catalyst that said, man, okay, I'm in a sales job right now. I want to take a swing. I want to set up my family for long-term success. I need to take the shot. which people have different risk profiles, but that was really my catalyst in my thinking at the time was let's push the chips in and try to do something there because I want to have an outsized outcome. And then I think as a first time entrepreneur, you get into it and you read into the media, right? And you read the TechCrunch launches and evaluations and high profile entrepreneurs. And you have this perspective on what you think entrepreneurship should be and that it's cool to be an entrepreneur. So you spend time at the meetups and the events, and then you realize that's just bullshit. And really what it comes down to is building something people love, talking to customers to understand and solve their problems, and genuinely falling in love with that job and that motion. And I think what was really insightful for me, I honestly, we were one of the first Slack-based apps, right? So it was like in the flow of work for employee feedback. HR tech is not something that you get a lot of people get excited to get out of bed for. But I think what was interesting is I didn't fall in love with being an entrepreneur or necessarily the problem, but I grew to love what we were doing. And some entrepreneurs come in and they're like, that's exactly what I want to do. I have a passion and a vision for this thing. And for me personally, I almost had to fall in love with the process where I thought initially, this was in my mind what I thought entrepreneurship would be. The reality of it was 90% of what you read is bullshit. And it ultimately is it's like caring about solving a problem and just being genuinely curious and doing whatever needs to be done to solve that problem. And then I grew to, you're really, what the hell? It's like this, my wife adopted a cat 5 years ago and I fucking hated this cat. Like I hated this cat, like pisses all over my house. But then there was a point, right, where like something changed and the cat, all of a sudden we just figured it out. And we have this really close relationship now. She's my girl. And you learn to love some of this eventually. So anyway, weird analogy, but that was just at least my experience in the early days.
That's fascinating. And I really love the acceptance that it's not perfect right out of the gate. And it rarely is perfect. And that's okay. So take me back to you said you were in a sales role before you and your brother started Disco. What were you selling and what was your world like in those days? And then we'll get into kind of where this idea came from and how you actually made the transition.
Yeah. So my brother and I were co-founders. We're co-founders in our current thing. We've always been partners in crime. I'll back up even before Disco. So I was at a company called Gigia, which SAP ended up acquiring. They were in the social infrastructure data management space. SAP bought them. I can't remember what year they bought them, but I was one of their early strategic enterprise sellers. So I was close friends with Patrick Sallier, he's a partner over at Mayfield now. He's exceptional leader, operator, investor for Mayfield and CEO at Gigia. And I was one of their sellers, and my brother and I were like, oh man, we should take swings. We were testing out a couple different things. And one of the interesting problem spaces that we were looking at was brick and mortar retail. So we saw this hackathon that Walmart and Home Depot put on, and we were like, let's just go in and make some stuff up and see if we can win a hackathon, right? We had no engineering skills. Like Jeremy was product and design and I was a sales guy. We went in for the hackathon and it was a retail oriented one where it was all around transforming the in-store experience. And this was back in 2012. And so the idea that we ended up landing on was this idea of in-store challenges. So you would basically interact with brands and compete with in-store participants to win discounts and deals. So the idea would be like, imagine stacking a Ritz cracker tower as high as you can against peers for the opportunity to like win something or get a discount or something, right? The idea wasn't fully baked, but the marketing of it was really good. So we ended up winning the hackathon. We ended up winning, nice. We ended up winning like 25 grand from Home Depot. We had this whole idea of pushing it in social. So we had this, you remember the pitch was the mow down challenge. The Home Depot CMO loved that. We
So
ended
wait,
up,
you won the first hackathon you ever went to, and then we're talking and pitching to the Home Depot CMO.
yeah. So this was the best part about it, right? Like we built no products. We mocked up everything. And these CS engineers are like, this is bullshit, right?
Yeah,
They
seriously.
worked on actually building functional prototypes. So we had a really good idea, a decent idea, and we were able to communicate the story well. Anyway, long and short of it is we took that, we packaged it up, we won that hackathon, and then we actually got into pretty deep conversations with Walmart about productizing this and making it part of the in-store engagement. And Walmart, we didn't have any IT, right? Like we had nothing, we had no product. So Walmart was basically like, we'd love to have you guys join and we'll essentially buy it for not much, right? Like nothing. And my brother and I were like, no, we're going to go big with this. It's going to be venture back. And then we just ran out of steam and ended up folding the concept. And so I think there was an insight in there where if you don't have something really, and somebody offers to buy it, sell.
Accept it. You just say, yep, deal done. Let's go.
You have to W. No, really, because that was an early loss, but we had a cool idea. We had a good early development partner, and who knows what that would have led to. But anyway, long and short of it is one of my buddies from college started a company that was coincidentally working in physical store retail. It was a startup called Nomi. And so he asked me to be his first sales hire. I actually moved to New York to take that job after Gigya because of the experience I had in retail and some of the success we had and the excitement I had around the space. And so I joined him as the first commercial hire at Nomi. And I was selling strategic commercial real estate, Simon Malls, Westfield, all the big box retailers. I signed all of them up as Nomi customers. That startup was acquired by one of the bigger insight analytics providers in the in-store retail space. So it was I think it was a decent outcome for everyone, at least for the founders and for venture. Awesome, crazy ride. But I think that was also a moment for me where I was like, man, I'm flying to Beijing to meet with Nike China. And I'm like, man, I got to start doing this for myself.
Right.
This is,
you were one level, you were the first salesperson, but you weren't any part of the founding team.
And that is a tough hire. That is a tough role for anyone it's a great opportunity to truly learn on someone else's and observe. But you have to have the right expectation going into a founding GTM role that there is so much that is still being figured out. And you have to be very flexible and open-minded that the equity that you're not even just the equity, but even just like the commission, right? The prospect of what this is going to take to actually get paid what you are expecting is going to be tough. And so there's a whole segment there that you could probably cover off on, but that was really a moment for me where I was like, man, okay, flying around all these countries. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. I learned so much. I have so much respect for Mark and Corey and Wes, the guys that founded that company, because it was just like, and especially as a founder now, just realizing some of the tough calls that they had to make at the time, I was so pissed, but it was like, you start to appreciate how hard it is and what you learn through the process.
But always looks different from the other side, right?
Yeah.
The tough calls, as you saw on one side of the table, the founder side, it looks like a call for all the right reasons. And on the other side, either the employee side or you leading the GTM piece, it looks like the completely wrong call. And not the ones necessarily right or wrong. They're just coming from two totally different points of view, of which both sides do not have that full visibility in that moment, right?
Yep.
So how did you rationalize those tough calls at the time? Because you were really close to the founding team, of course, and you were really successful in your role. Was there a lot of tension that came as a result of some of those tough calls?
Yeah, I actually think not necessarily even while we were selling and moving, and the business was actually growing, and it was messy and there were things that were broken operationally, but it was fun. That was part of it. We're in this shift with, call it 30 other people living in Manhattan. It was the experience, it was the startup experience. So I actually, and a lot of good friendships that were built out of that from that time. So I think there was some sadness in ultimately the fact that the vision sort of fell short. And there was a really strong belief and conviction as I was having these conversations with customers too, right? You have to have that as a seller. I think it was actually through the merger and the sale that a lot of that broke down, because it was similarly, again, from a point of transition where it's no longer your thing anymore. And someone else with a different culture set comes in and sets the tone. And then you've got to figure out how those worlds come together. And we were acquired by a company that was based in the South, in the South, and out of Atlanta. And so it was like, okay, just different vibe, different leadership structure, different, and for better or worse, like ultimately they made it work, and the products, they were able to support customers. And I think it was a good outcome for most folks. But yeah, I think that was actually the harder part, was again at the transition point. But
Yeah. And did you exit then after the transition point of the acquisition, or did you stay on for a bit?
yeah, so they kept me on. They let most of the uh, startup employees go, but they actually kept me on full time, and then as a consultant and advisor to the company, just because I maintained the majority of the enterprise customer relationships. So like I had the ties to Simon Malls and the team there, and Nordstrom, and just built some really great relationships with people through the course of that journey. So I stayed on, and it was a pretty open conversation actually with the founding team there, where it was like, I have aspirations to start my own company. And they were pretty supportive through the process, where they gave me, like, they cut down the travel expectations and gave me space to be able to build and explore and incubate and network, just given, which I thought was really good of them. Yeah, it definitely was tough, because I think partially too, it's like when they see that you've given everything that you've got to this venture and this business, and it doesn't fully materialize to the thing that you were hoping or expecting it to, but there's some level of mutual respect that people, I think in general, want to be good to people that they take a bet on. Yeah.
100%. 100%. All right. So that was the start of Disco then, in that transition time. Is that
Yes.
right? You and your brother went to town.
Yeah. So Jeremy was, and this is funny. It's actually funny, the founding story behind, because not many people know this, but Jeremy's actually self-taught. I wouldn't call him an engineer, but taught himself how to build, basically. And he was tinkering around with a couple of ideas. And the way that our relationship works is, he is one of the most resourceful, creative people I've ever had the privilege of working with. And he built this site. It was sort of like Glassdoor, but for people. And in professionals context, you can basically anonymously rate and review your interactions with your boss online. And we grew this thing to like 500,000 profiles, right? And
individual profiles, like,
yeah,
wow.
it was taking off. The feedback was valuable, but as you can imagine, when you have some level of anonymity on the web,
it devolves.
Kind of the turd in the pool there. Like, it ends up making things a little bit destructive. But long and short of it is, we got a legal letter from one company who's a senior level executive was on site. Very valid feedback, by the way, from multiple sources. Where you're like, oh, this is valuable, but very damaging. So they requested that we shut the site down. And so that kind of put the kibosh on. It was called backdoor.com.
That was the name. Oh,
that was the name of the site. We actually
we
didn't own the domain for Backdoor. It was actually checkmybackdoor.com. That was the domain that we owned. For your listeners, I would not navigate to that domain.
Yeah, not safe for work.
But this was the catalyst though, where it was like, feedback in a work context is valuable and people care about this stuff. But then there was this opportunity to take this consumer facing app and funnel it into enterprise workflows where we could actually unlock constructive feedback. And so that was that initial insight that we got. And this was before Lattice. And I think we had met with Dan DeBow, who was the founder of a company called Ripple.
I remember Ripple.
Yeah, which Salesforce acquired. And Dan, we met with him to talk about the idea, and he was like, dude, don't do this. Don't dude, don't do this business. You're he's HR is the worst. You're not, this was 2012. Don't do this. And we were like, all right, what does this guy know? So we pushed on. And again, it ended up working out. But man, when you're a founder and you've lived through it and you've built in the category or you've gotten stars from it, it's really tough to not advise someone to not do the thing, right? So you have to have some level of irrational, just a level of irrational confidence to just keep going.
So that irrational confidence. So you heard this from somebody who you respected and obviously is at a different point in the journey than you, and you completely ignored the advice.
Yeah.
What was the conversation with you and your brother like after that conversation where you're like, this is like, how'd you guys get past that and being like, did you consider it? Did you just say, you know what? No, we got to keep blazing down this path.
I think we just thought he was soft. I think we were like, okay. And he was reporting a Benny off. So we were like, okay, how bad could this be? Look who your boss is. And you had a pretty decent outcome, right? Like you sold that for like $30 or $40 million. And I'm like, he seems like he's doing all right.
Yeah.
But then again, I think that's just the bigger theme with this stuff is it's like everyone sees the outcome and they don't understand everything that goes into what it takes to build something really great that people love.
Yeah.
And especially as a salesperson, you just in general go to market, sales folks are like product or marketing. It takes effort to really build stuff that people love and to understand their problem and understand their business and go deep there. Right. And I think that's what he was referring to. Right. And I'm honestly, I feel grateful that we survived it and we had a good outcome, but I don't feel like I would be and again, I have so much to learn here, but I don't know if I would be as sharp if I hadn't almost broken. The first time. Yeah.
Fascinating. All right. So the business begins to grow. You have this idea. You and your brother go and spend all time, effort, and energy on creating something that people really love. Talk to me about what that is really, because you're right. It rarely gets talked about, and then people will throw one name that everybody knows out and be like, just do it like them. It's not that easy. What is it really like on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month basis, especially when you're the founder, when you're trying to build the company, but you're also trying to serve potential investors and others, but you also got to serve your employees, and then you also got to serve your customers, and you got 8,000 voices telling you, this is what I need. How do you manage through that?
Yeah. I think it's at this stage. Okay. So first it's about who you found the company with. I think that's the foundation for anything and everything. My brother he's my ride or die as my partner. The founder our co-founding CTO, who we built our first venture with, Joseph, had such a great appreciation for detail, usability, user experience. Like his background was in building some of the earliest social games, right? Built a messaging app that previously had sold to Yahoo. And I think you have to find partners that are willing to sign up for that aren't looking for the shortcuts and that work well together. Right. And I think that was finding the right trio or the foundation of the people that you started with that's like non-starter, right? Like you have to have that. And then I think from there, it's alignment on the customer. And what's interesting is customer development. All of your time at this stage or the earliest stage is just talking to people, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, how can I solve for talking to as many people in and around the domain and space to understand their world, the problems they're facing, so that we can try to shape our direction to align to see if we can solve, if it's interesting and commercially viable to solve that problem. And it's a really tricky balance, I think, in the early stages too, where you're blending innovation and wanting to apply your sparkle with the reality of this problem maybe isn't incredibly sexy. So I don't know.
I did want to get to that because the space that you're in, this feedback in a professional environment, some would say it's a problem. Some people would say it's not a problem.
Yeah.
So how did you get to the point where you understood enough about the known problem as opposed to
Yeah.
having to pitch and tell a story of what ideal is like, and then have people realize, oh, we're not anywhere close to that. That is a problem.
Yeah. Yep. There was an Intuit, again, shout outs to Intuit's such a great organization, and just early career opportunities there, being able to have products development frameworks and things to work from. This concept of going broad to go narrow, it's like the classic PM model where you start with broad products surface area, and then you try to really hone in on, and you're constantly going like this, where it's, and Scott Cook, who's one of the godfathers of the Valley, has the WHYS methodology, where it's, you keep asking your 6 whys. And I think it was just through that, when we launched Disco, at the time it was called Growbot as a Slack bot, the product had broader functionality to see like what resonated with people, right? You could survey inside of Slack, you could give peer feedback, and you could give recognition with the tool. And we put that out there, and we just were looking at engagement, right? And we were seeing like, what are people using day to day most frequently, right? And recognition was one of those things that we just saw was like skyrocketing. And so then we started to say, oh, okay, let's go more narrow on this category and say, who are the existing players and how big is the market and what is our unique spin on it? And then you broaden back out again. And it's constantly that. So we ended up landing where direct employee feedback maybe wasn't the most sexy category, hair on problem to solve, hair on fire problem to solve, but really the pivot into recognition feedback and reinforcing company values as part of recognition feedback was insightful. And so that was something where we saw, okay, yes, recognition on its base could be viewed as a nice to have, but being able to reinforce a company's values and tie that to work artifacts is actually something that was incredibly valuable across the entire life cycle of the employee journey, right? When it comes to performance management, when it comes to things like skill assessment and employee development, right? If you're getting recognized for being a great engineer or customer support, right? And aligned with your values, there's really valuable data in those interactions that are happening day to day. And so it was an interesting combination of, this is recognition on its face is probably a vitamin, not a painkiller. Oh, this is actually the foundation for a lot of hair on fire problems where this data becomes useful. Then you can position your product in a really interesting and valuable lens.
So their story that you were telling in the sales process was not just the act of the recognition, it was all the downstream things that were happening tied back to the root cause, which was recognition or a lack thereof.
That's right. It's really tough to measure. It's not actually, surveys are the lagging indicator of measuring employee sentiment and engagement. And you can see when you've got meaningful feedback or recognition, if you throttle it and spikes, you throw money at the problem. That was a study that we did. We actually did a really cool behavioral econ study with my good friend, Kristen Berman, who she founded Irrational Labs with Dan Ariely on motivators in the workplace. Is a great book called Payoff, which Dan wrote. And it was the fact that if you buy employees pizza, they'll work harder for you than if you just throw bonuses at them, which I thought was like interesting. And
what's the science, but what's the logic and science behind that from the study?
So I think it's partially, so it's interesting. Okay. So to build on that, it was, if you buy pizza for your employee's family, it'll boost it.
Okay.
Because it removes the logistical load on somebody having to plan and meal plan what they're going to provide for their family.
Got it.
Right? And so
Yep.
There was there's a lot of really interesting work that we did around employee motivators and incentives and intrinsic versus extrinsic motivators. And just, we were in the middle of that, right? And like this time when you factor in a pandemic that's forcing everyone to work distributed, right? It's like, how do you bring
time? Yeah.
How do you bring that online? You get data around that. Yeah. It
Yeah.
is exactly right. Like this is back to my earlier point around just falling in love with the problem space. It started with, oh, entrepreneurship is cool because I want to aspire to work toward an outcome where you get to the place where you're genuinely curious about, oh, okay, this is an interesting organizational problem that I have a unique perspective on that I can actually help solve. And that was really, I think, the journey that all of us went on when we were building the company.
That's really cool. So, had you ever experienced any of this as a problem yourself in prior roles? Was it like a lot of times founders will come from having experienced some problem themselves and said, I have to do this a better way or something like that?
Yeah.
Did you experience any of this yourself, or was it more about the exploration of what is the most viable problem that we could solve and the back and forth you were talking about that really helped it come to life and helped you have develop your unique perspective on it?
Yeah. I think I'm giving credit to my brother as the co-founder here. He's so good at that. Honestly, his whole ethos is really, I have this problem. I want to build something to solve this problem. And at any one point, he's got 20 or 30 apps just going, right? Like
That's
he's
awesome.
fun up or vibe coded, right? Like it's in this day and age, right? Like he's always thinking. But the feedback problem that I talked about earlier was to solve one of his problems, which was I want a space to just highlight where things are broken within the organization, right? And I want to be able to hold people accountable for
Yeah.
shit behavior. And so it worked, right? It actually worked.
It worked until somebody noticed.
Exactly. But I think I didn't enter disco with that
Yeah.
appreciation. My role in it was, okay, there's signal of something here. How do we turn this into a commercially viable business and really think about it? My background isn't in consumer stuff, right? Like I love consumer oriented founders. I wish I was one. That's not the world that I knew or I know much about. It's almost like trying to think of I see someone that's a really successful consumer founder and I'm like, or it's like a successful musician. I was like, God, I wish I could play like that. Or I wish I had like that skill set, but it's just something that I haven't embraced for myself. But yeah, anyway, sorry, I rambled there, but I think it's more about, yeah, just, I guess, navigating back to a position of strength and understanding where I get energy, what drives my curiosity. And so that's where we ended up landing. Landing with this show.
Was the plan all along to exit by selling to another company? Did you have a defined timeline or exit plan as you were either starting out or as you built the company, or did it evolve? How did that whole piece work?
Yeah, I think it evolved and changed at various stages in the journey. To be honest, there was right after the close of our seed rounds and the Slack ecosystem. If you looked at Slack's growth and the just explosion of what was going on with Microsoft Teams at that time, and Slack had taken out a full page ad in the Wall Street Journal, right? There was just this feel of, oh my gosh, right? Like enterprise messaging is going to be the new run operating system for the enterprise. And we're in the mix of this. And so it just felt, and we were selling a vision of this is what the future HRIS should look like in this new operating system. If you can do recognition, you can do onboarding, you can do payroll, you can do learning. Everything should be able to be run through this interface. And so that was the vision that we were positioning was, yes, we're shifting culture, but we can actually pick off a lot of these different jobs as part of the HR workflow. And so we were like, man, this could be a billion-dollar company. And so we had those expectations where we didn't think we wanted to sell and we wanted to continue to raise. And we were like, but then the market dynamic changes and the ecosystem cooled off a little bit. And then I think Salesforce acquired Slack, and to my knowledge, but it's been a good acquisition. Continues to be a great platform. They've been an awesome team, but as someone that was building in their ecosystem, it capped what the upside could be. And I think it was one of the partners that we were speaking with during our Series A raise brought up. I mean, there was a question of like, how many multi-billion-dollar companies have been built on the back of someone else's platform?
Right.
You know,
Right.
and it was a real sort of introspection moment there where we're like, oh shit, okay,
Yeah.
yeah,
We might be.
exact target, right? We were like, think about it. Back at that time, it was, you know, some of the ESPs, and it was like, that's about it, right? So I think there was a real question for us internally of saying, okay, if we're going to raise 10 or 12 million dollars, we're going to have to figure out how this becomes, how we continue to sustain this to make this a multi-billion-dollar company. And I think that for us, it was like, man, I don't know. I don't think the venture track is going to work out. Like, it's not going to make sense. So at that point, it was a question for us where we were profitable. We were generating 7 figures in revenue. We had a team, I think 7 employees at the time. It was a good business, right? Like we had built a good business. And I think there was this question of, do we want to build a lifestyle company, or do we want to take a big swing, right, and try to do something bigger? And that was some of the math some of the things I think we were thinking through when that time came. And then the pandemic was really the catalyst for us, because then it was like, okay, this is, again, it's moving from a nice to have to a need to have, but the ecosystem question, I think, was still always looming in the back of my mind, right? Of man, okay, how big could this thing be? So yeah, so we that was really the decision point. I think to your initial question, I don't think our initial intention was, oh yeah, we're gonna try to exit for X amount. We want to build something big. We see an opportunity to build something differentiated and big, but I think that there were just certain things that we felt shifted as the market evolved, and we were able to react accordingly.
Did you end up raising the A round, or did you sell it around that time too?
Yeah, so we had a term sheet for a Series A, but we ended up not taking it, and the terms were fair. It wasn't like a down round or anything, or they were trying to gut us. I think it was a combination of, we had been at it for 6.5 years. We were doing, again, moderate 7 figures. And there was a question of, could we get this thing to see the next inflection point? And what would it take if we raised $12 million to get that value back for our investors? And I just felt like we didn't feel as confident about that path.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm really glad we did. I'm really glad we sold when we did, because I think it was the right call. And again, I think it was a good outcome, right? It was a good outcome for investors that stuck with us, for our employees that stuck with us. I think we brought really good ideas, talent, and tech to Culture Amp. The Disco product lives on inside of the Culture Amp platform.
That says a lot.
Employee recognition. So it's like that product still exists today. It's cool to see that continue to live on. So
was Culture Amp a target in you going out and trying to find an acquisition partner, or did they come to you and say, hey, this would make a great addition to our suite? How'd the whole start of the acquisition go down?
Yeah. So Didier Zinga, CEO and co-founder, just exceptional. You read the stuff that he's written, hear him speak. He's top notch, man. He's just like great human being, really cares, almost to a default, cares about his people and his culture. And I think I got connected with him actually almost 2 years before the acquisition. So one of our advisors, Evan Wittenberg, he's the chief people officer at Ancestry, and he was the chief people officer at Fox before that. Evan's also great. Put me in touch with Didier because he was like, oh, there could be an interesting integration and partnership opportunity, because he knew what we were doing inside of Slack and feedback. And we actually had a ton of mutual customers with Culture Amp. So
I bet, yeah.
There were we probably had 40 or 50 mutual customers already.
That's some good alignment right there.
Yeah, it was really good. Yeah. So honestly, over the course of 2 years, we had been in conversations with Didier about deeper integration, go to market, co-marketing. And then I think we all got to that place where right around the pandemic, Culture Amp did the build versus buy and said, we need to accelerate the position around distributed culture and remote work. And there was this question of how long is it going to take us to be able to respond in these market dynamics versus have this tiger team come in and just plug in what they're doing. Plus we had sort of a PLG motion, which was interesting for them, right? Like you could install Slack install Disco from the Slack ecosystem and have it grow that way. So it opened up more opportunity for them. And I guess long and short of it is about 2 years we got connected. We hadn't really explored M&A up until that point. And then when the world shifted, it was, we got a tracker. We got it happen.
Fascinating how it all comes together and then you look back and you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And in the moment, maybe not so much. All right. So once the acquisition goes down and you get, you were going to continue on as part of Culture Amp and just you, Justin, and you can share what the rest of the team did in a minute, but your role shifted dramatically from being founder and co-founder and CEO, visionary seller. And then now you're inside a much larger organization, albeit a great one, and just in a completely different capacity. What was that transition like while you were going through this, everything else, all the feels we talked about earlier, the loss and kind of re-questioning what's right for you?
Yeah, it was interesting. I feel like I'm being pretty vulnerable here, but whatever, we're going to go for it. There was a little bit of imposter syndrome when I started, which was interesting. I felt like I came in, we built this thing, sold the company. It was like a lone wolf, right? We had a couple of employees and we loved working with them. And it was an awesome thing that we had built. But then you go to a company of 1,200 employees and it's just different operating rhythm, bigger teams, more resources, but then you're overthinking a lot of the things that you just naturally did, which was probably should polish this presentation before I get up in front of 300 people to talk about it. And what does a successful executive look like at a high growth mid-market style company, right? And am I that guy, right? And so there was a lot of questions there of just operating from this skill set that I hadn't had to flex in a while, right? Like when I was a product manager at Intuit, there was the ability to influence, right? And being able to, all of these skills that have just been dormant when you're either in a direct sales role and you're just responsible for hitting your number, or you're an entrepreneur and you're just trying to go from 0 to 1. And a lot of that is just kind of like, just build the stuff customers want, right?
Right. That's the only job requirement.
If you're thinking about, I don't know. Again, there are entrepreneurs that have done this way more successfully than I am, but I feel like if you're thinking about operating rhythm, you do need some level of documentation. You do need to get clarity on goals. But man, in these early innings, it's just you can find the problem that lights everybody out, that solves for the customer, and just spend all your time talking to people. That's all it is. And the scale up stuff happens later, but until you nail that, it's a waste.
So what would then when you joined Culture Amp?
So I was in charge of global partnerships, and partially they put me. So my first job was I was in revenue enablement to help our field sellers sell the Disco product. So
makes sense.
Spent a lot of time thinking about like how to position, how to sell it, how to talk about it. I would join sales calls. And then midway through, I actually made the case to Didier, our CRO at the time, that we needed to lean into the partner ecosystem because HR is becoming more interconnected. The tool stack, we needed to get Culture Amp out in more places. And so they let me build the team out, which is cool because like then you got to flex some of your entrepreneurial stuff. You got to build from the early innings. And so it was actually a really good fit. But of course, I didn't have as much context about Culture Amp's business. And I had several folks on my team who were just like awesome. They were rock stars. One in particular, her name's Lonnie Paroka. She's a channel leader and worked for me. Man, just like such a good commercial minded hustler leader who had so much organizational context and knowledge that could help shape what the function needed to look like and be. And I don't know. It was, I think there was a certain level of imposter syndrome where it felt like I need to show up and feel like I know what I'm doing versus, you know what, sometimes it's just better to let your people cook that actually have the organizational knowledge and let them tell you what you should do.
Right. Right.
And then that was what worked, right? Like we actually had built a cohesive strategy. We hit our pipeline targets. We grew the program out really well. So I think and again, it was a good learning moment for me again, and even in there. And I think, yeah, it was a really good experience on the day-to-day job that I was doing. And so hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, no,
Sorry.
I mean, you hear all kinds of stories, good,
Yeah.
bad, indifferent on,
Yeah.
the golden handcuffs. I got to stick around here for 2 years and then I'm in some roles
Yes.
that I don't like, or I don't like working for somebody else. You hear it across the spectrum. So it's really interesting to hear that even as what the outer world of society would say was a successful founder that exited and then went into a company can still feel imposter syndrome because it's a completely
Yes.
different world. Right?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
huge. And that I don't think there's some people will never admit that, but imposter syndrome
Yeah.
can exist any place. So what was it that allowed you to overcome that feeling in that transition, getting to ultimately to the partnerships team and then finding your rhythm?
I think it was getting the wins. Honestly, we were winning. The function was working and we were winning as a team. We were a small, scrappy team, but we were hitting our targets. We were doing good foundational work and it was working. There were some things for sure, but I think that was the thing that kind of gave me conviction that I'm like, okay, yeah, dude, you can do this. This is like, once you figured this out, it's okay. You belong here. So I think the thing that I wasn't great at was, I think just the internal influence. That was something that I felt like, and this is partially why I got out of product initially for large companies, because I always felt like I wanted my work to speak for itself. My style has always been lead from the front and results speak for themselves, which is you've got a revenue target. No one's going to mess with you when you're
Pretty straightforward. Mm-hmm.
target, right? So I think that was just, it was a muscle that I hadn't flexed in a while. And so, but it's a critical one, right? Like the ability to frame and influence and the internal stakeholders of whose incentive is what, why. It's a level of chess that it takes a while to dust off his skills.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
It is. Okay. At what point did you realize it was time to exit Culture Amp?
Yeah. It actually wasn't my choice. So that was partially part of
Okay.
it too.
What were the circumstances?
Yeah. Hot take here. No, the Culture Amp made a tough decision last spring to let go of their entire product presence in the United States. So they decided to, and I think it makes sense, right? It's a very sensitive time with AI and trying to think through the strategy, and all of the founding product leadership was based in Melbourne. And so I think they wanted to bring engineering and product culture together to have it be under one office. And it was just like tough to maintain. I think it was just an operating decision and how they wanted to pull the product team together. So they actually, the entire disco team was impacted from that. And again, I no ill will, like everybody held up their end of the bargain from, right. And they were great about our exit out. So anyway, that was what was the catalyst. And again, I think that with Thread, there became this realization through running this partnerships team that I was like, man, I felt like I needed to be this executive at a mid-market company, right? Or I was expected to be a VP of partnerships at OpenAI or Anthropic. And then it was just like, it's actually okay to just want to be a builder. Like maybe being an entrepreneur is okay. Right? Maybe. So I think there was acceptance of myself of these are the things that I think I'm great at, and these are the things that I don't get as much energy in and around. And I think again, back to this if it wasn't necessarily about that solo outcome in that day in my kitchen, and it was more about the people that I was doing this stuff with through the journey, I got to work with my brother again. Now it's been, I need to have this guy in my life doing this stuff. And I have a really gracious, patient spouse and partner most days. She's pretty patient. And I think what was also really interesting was, you ever watch The Office?
Oh yeah.
There's this great episode when she was like, do you ever see the one where David Wallace gets laid off and then Michael goes over? It's the Suck It episode where he's over there and his kid's playing the drums and it's Suck It. Michael Scott leaves there and I don't know who that person was, but that was not David Wallace because he shows up in his robe. And Kayla, my wife, is always reminded me of David Wallace there for a stretch. Like you look like incredibly lost. I went deep down the route of finding stuff to fill the void. I picked up 4 different instruments. I was running an Ironman. You just try to find everything to fill the void. And then it was just this acceptance of, you know what, it's just okay to be this person. Right. And you should do this thing. So that was the catalyst for taking another run at it.
That's some powerful learnings in what that transition, like just how to feel good all the time, as opposed to I only feel good after I have an exit or after I make a certain amount of money, because that's always fleeting, just like that moment in the kitchen. Yeah. It was powerful, but it wasn't long lasting. So let's talk about a little bit about Thread. You and your brother are back on the co-founding track. Tell us a little bit about the product and also the angle, but also what are you taking into building Thread after your entire experience from building Disco, going into Culture Amp, coming out of Culture Amp, and being in a much different place personally and professionally than you were when you started last time?
Yeah, for sure. I think Thread, we were focusing, and I know that's how we got connected initially, was in looking at the post-sale customer experience. The initial insight that we got for the company was it actually came from Culture Amp, where we were in a lot of shared kickoff calls with customer success. And oftentimes we would get on calls with customers. And there was always this question of, okay, so why did you buy? What are you trying to achieve? What outcome are you looking to achieve? And I was like, man, the customer says, we've spent 8 months in sales with you guys. How the hell do you not know what we were talking about to try to achieve this? And so that was initially the wedge that we set out to solve with Thread, is we want to solve that handover problem of how do you bring post-sale or pre-sale context to help set up customers at the most pivotal time in their journey with you, which is like onboarding and how their first interaction is when they get live with your service. Right. And so that's where we're focused today. We've built an execution and orchestration product that takes all of your pre-sales context. It helps make sure that your internal teams are aligned on the things that they need to do to implement and deliver the service. And the customer knows what they need to do as well. And we've built a pretty killer product for that. Early stage, we've got a handful of really great customers that are shaping that vision with us. We've raised some venture capital. We're a mean lean team, but it feels good to be back in the builder seat for sure.
Love it. All right. So what's the biggest learning that you've taken on round 2 here that is just makes this a different journey than round 1?
Yeah, I think a lot has changed, obviously, in the macro environment. We're an AI native, everybody calls themselves AI native, but truly we started a year ago. So we are AI native. Yeah. But I think that the speed at which these markets are evolving is like nothing I've ever seen before. It's so much easier to prototype and validate and test ideas. And I think with that, you start to realize how valuable distribution becomes. And you also realize how it's easy to prototype and build MVPs, but also how difficult it still is to build stuff that people want to use every day. So nothing about that has actually changed. I think how I operate to get insights and learn faster has changed. And I've built agents, tooling, workflows that help me be more efficient in my day to day. But as far as the work, it's just increased the velocity. It hasn't changed the approach in a lot of ways. because ultimately it comes down to just talking to people and listening and understanding what problems they're trying to solve. Right. I do think that the platform dependency thing, that was a big insight, and building on somebody else's platform versus something that stands alone, I think was a big one when we went through this round. I think the ability to throw away work and not be so prideful and hang on to it longer than you need to. Because again, with that, we've actually pivoted a couple different times with Thread already, right? Where it's easier to pivot now because you can test and iterate, but at the same time, it's still painful, right? Because it's time that you do a concept or an idea. And I think just having the flexibility and willingness to be able to do that faster, I feel like our team has become more comfortable this time around. And then what else? I think.
How about on the personal side? Your family is a lot different at a much different stage than it was the last time. And you've obviously processed a lot about what's really important. So how has that balance and just your relationship with your children and your spouse evolved this time around, or how is it going to evolve?
I think there's definitely a level of comfort in knowing that we're good. Like, I'm not going to, right? Like, my kids will have money for college. Our house, we're in a good spot, right? Financially, there is a level of security and comfort in that. But at the same time, I'm trying to, without the, I do a lot of cheesy analogies, but it's like Rocky won, right? He went the distance with Apollo, but he didn't take him down, right?
Yep.
So it's like, it's still that aspect of in Rocky 2. It was sort of in the Rocky 2 moment, right? Where it's okay, I want to push to the next level, right? I want to see what else is beyond this, because the new experience, right? It's something that it's less about, again, it's not the financial piece of it. It's just, I want to experience and learn as much as I can about this thing that I do for my living. And so I think as part of that, when you realize that, okay, it's not about the outcome, it's about who you have along on that journey with you, which again that's why the people piece is so big. I'm doing this with my brother again.
Yeah.
And I think on the family front, I think it's really good. Anybody that I feel like with children, it's just great to see your parents stack it every once in a while and try and fail. My family owned and operated a small dairy farm. They were builders. They were entrepreneurs.
Nice.
That's just a really awesome example and foundation for not just hard work, because anyone can work hard, but I also feel like it's just good to expose them to that so they can see what is possible. And whether they decide to be an entrepreneur or do something else, it's good to see that there isn't just one track, right? There are many tracks that you could take to get to the place that ultimately makes you feel fulfilled. Yeah, I don't know, on the personal front, what's interesting too is for my wife and I specifically, I think we've gotten to this place where we just have an appreciation for what gets the other one going. And I think that there's sort of like mutual acceptance that this is who Justin is, right? And this is what Kayla needs and who Kayla is in her day to day. And I think it's been entrepreneurship, ironically, has been this interesting forcing function of helping us figure that out together and actually build a better and stronger relationship. You're right.
That's fantastic. Oftentimes it goes the other way. One's too much, right? And I love that you two have used it as the catalyst to build a stronger relationship and really more deeply understand each other. Because as you noted, it is all about finding what you enjoy. And whether that's entrepreneurial ventures, whether that's doing anything under the sun, it doesn't really matter, as long as one, you personally find it enjoyable, right?
Yeah.
And two, philosophy, you just do it the best that you humanly possibly can. There's no reason to just throw in the towel, I guess I would say, right? It's just go to town if you want to build. If you don't, cool.
That's right. And I guess it's back to the other point too. And this is, again, speaking on, this is for better or worse. And with my style and approach, at the end of the day, the only people that really give a shit about what you're doing and building are the people that care about you, that are in your network, that you are doing this with and for, and the customers that you serve, right? And the people that are backing you. So I don't know. Anything else where there's energy spent is just wasted time. So invest there and it's going to work out. And even if it doesn't work out, man, it's a freaking awesome journey, an awesome story. And there's a lot of gratitude that I have. Even in this has been a hard ass week for me for some reason. I don't know. I had expectations going into this week that there were going to be a couple of wins that didn't materialize that way. And so I'm like, God damn it. Like even myself, it's like you have those expectations that it all needs to work out this way. You're going to be incredibly disappointed. Just try to have as much fun doing it as you can, I guess is what I'd say.
Sage advice, man. Sage advice. All right, Justin, as we begin to wrap up here, what do you think all these experiences, the good, the bad, the indifferent, the sideways, the ups and the downs, what do you think though they were all trying to teach you that perhaps you weren't completely ready to understand or fully conceptualize in the moment?
Yeah. I think that there's this bigger, I don't know if this is pessimistic, but life in general is hard. Like there are going to be aspects and points in life that are just darker or harder. And in the entrepreneur's journey, that's the majority of the experience, actually. And honestly, it's the extremes. And I think your ability to stay here through the ups and the downs is a really important thing that I've had to embrace and evolve, right? Because like when things are really good, they're really good. And you get like a dopamine that you get really fixed on that outcome. So I think just teaching, like being able to have the practice to be able to stay here is really good. And I think that's one big thing. And then I think, I don't know, a lot of people they talk about their legacy. And I honestly, I'm just getting started with this stuff, right? This is a long game. It takes a long time to build. So I think being able to be just patient, be kind to your partners, like your internal, your family, your partners, be kind to your co-founders, assume good intent. These are all things that I haven't always showed up in ways that I'm proud of internally or externally, but I just feel like those are real life skills that help you build long-term, great, sound relationships. And I also, the biggest thing for me is it's my family above everything else. I want my kids to listen to my corny podcast recordings, right? 30 years from now to say, you know what, dad was pretty fucking, like, he was a cool guy. He was a hardworking, kind, good person that like tried to make that, right? That's all that's ultimately going to matter at the end of all this. Yeah. Maybe that isn't aspirational enough, but it's what matters to me right now. So
It's what matters. I think it said it perfectly. At the end of all of this, life as you know it, there's only a very few small things that truly matter. And then awareness can yield the greatest potential changes and influences in your life. And I can't remember who it is. There's some notable person who consistently writes and reads their obituary they write it once a year and then they read it every morning or something. Do you know who it is? I can't remember.
No, I feel like I've heard. Yeah.
For the sole purpose of just reminding them every day what's really important, because oftentimes that's the determining factor of what's really important is when you're staring at something that you can't overcome. I'm with you 100%. And if you're clear on what matters, then you can live a happy and fulfilled life no matter what. If you're always choosing something else for one of those reasons that we talked about, or somebody else's approval or behavior, it's going to be a long, hard slog. Yep. So Justin, where can folks connect with you, find out more about Thread, check out your podcast?
Yeah, for sure. And thanks again for the awesome conversation. It was good to just, I don't know, step back in time, reflect on the journey. It's always nice, especially when you're going through it right now. Hit me up, Justin at thread.app. Podcast is the Thread podcast. If you've got ideas for guests, I'm going to be releasing an episode with Niels. Actually, we did a mutual release here, so you'll see him on the show. He's doing great work. And if you're in GTM post-sales leadership, if you are thinking about where post-sale and AI converge and you struggle with handoffs in your customer delivery and implementation, we built a pretty killer product. So I would love to chat with you about it.
Fantastic. We'll have all those links in the description so everybody can check it out. connect with you. And thank you so much for coming on, being vulnerable, and just sharing your experience. I really appreciate it. It meant a lot to me to hear what it was like going through that and just the honest reflections. That's why Courage and Breakthroughs exists, as you
Yeah.
overcame fear, you blazed new paths, you did it, and you're here to tell the story and help some other folks go through it perhaps a little bit differently than you did the first time around. And that's the beauty of us giving back and sharing these stories. So thank you again for coming on. There you have it, another great episode of the Courage and Breakthroughs podcast. If you'd like to continue the conversation, go to nilsvinje.com. That's Nils, V as in Victor, INJE.com. You can listen to previous episodes, apply to be a guest on the show, or get in touch with me. And until next time, have a wonderful rest of your day.